Stellar Crown is finally out, and the new Brier supporter is about to change the game as we know it. You can use this card only if your opponent has exactly 2 prize cards remaining. During this turn, if your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack used by your Terra Pokemon, take 1 more prize card. Extra prize card effects have historically been very powerful in the Pokemon TCG's history, with many of us still scarred from the dreaded ADP era and its Altered Creation GX attack, where this monster of a card quite literally altered the universe and sent the Pokemon TCG into the Dark Ages when Zacian V was released. They combined to make one of the most formidable and powerful decks the game has ever seen, able to win in just 3 turns with very little anyone could do to stop it, with powerful supporting Pokemon such as the Dene and Crobat. More recently though, Stoutland's Double Dip Fangs was a powerful asset in Lugia decks thanks to the bonus damage from powerful energy, but those cards haven't been legal since back in April 2023. There are other examples of cards that interacted with the prize cards directly, such as Naganadel and Gosler's Chaotic Order GX or Cortana's Blade GX attack. None of these come anywhere near close to ADP's brokenness and dominance. However, the new supporter Brier might be bringing us a new extra prize effect that will affect the current prize maps of every deck, and likely affect the metagame in a significant manner, as this is a global effect for any Terra Pokemon. In this video, we will analyze why this is such a powerful effect and which decks will really benefit from it. Don't forget that you can watch videos 24 hours earlier if you become a channel member by following the link in the description below. This kind of support helps me continue to create content like this, so please consider becoming a channel member if you enjoy the content. Brier is a card that has been discussed as both a card that will accelerate wins for some decks, letting them win a turn earlier than usual thanks to that extra prize card, and also a card that will slow things down, since decks will be more cautious in what prizes they take, possibly shying away from the 2-2-2 so that they don't purposely find themselves at 2 prizes left, and instead try to go for a couple of 1 prizes at a point to go to uneven prizes, and therefore making each game take a turn longer. There are currently 3 top decks that will be able to use Brier effectively: Charizard, Dragapult, and Raging Bolt. As you can see, over in Japan, where the card is legal and a lot of City League tournaments are taking place, the card is really putting in work in a lot of tournaments. Now, before you ask, yes, Ceruledge EX is having success over there as it is a Terra Pokemon that can make use of Brier. However, we know that it won't be coming out in our version of Stellar Crown, and we won't be getting the card until November, which is why I'm not talking about it in this video. Even though the set just came out recently on PTCG Live, this card is already quite popular in the online tournaments and being included in the same decks. These 3 decks are really raking in the placements, and I believe Charizard is the most consistent of the 3, having the ever reliable Pidgeot and Quick Search at its disposal to search for Brier on the perfect turn, as well as Dusclops and Duskmor's Curse Blast to have some sort of control on their opponent's prizes, and thus forcing them to have exactly 2 remaining so you can use it. Now, it's important to note that, for example, if you play Brier when your opponent has 2 prize cards, and then you activate Curse Blast, the effect of the extra prize remains active. It doesn't go away because your opponent doesn't have 2 prize cards anymore, so hopefully that helps clear some confusion that I'm sure would arise with this card. This alone makes any Duskull on the bench a much bigger threat now, and therefore this could indirectly protect your other Pokemon in play. I'm sure a lot of you watching this video have been in situations when you are 3 prizes down to their 2 and you have to scramble to attack with Radiant Charizard and use Unfurst Stamp or Iono to disrupt an opponent's hand, hoping they don't find the game-winning boss against some of your 2 prize Pokemon on the bench, as there is no way to win that turn. Well, now this will change, as I can envision scenarios where Brier lets you win games that normally you wouldn't. Now, instead of scrambling for a defensive play like the one I mentioned, you can actively establish your Charizard EX, use Brier, and take 3 prizers on a 2 prizer in order to win the game a turn earlier than normal. In the format prior to Stellar Crown, Charizard lost a lot of ground to Regidrago decks, as they can swiftly use Dragapult's Phantom Dive on turn 2 to pretty much eliminate any chance of setting up a Pidgeot during a game. Some Charizard decks have tried to play around this by utilizing cards like Thornton in order to be able to immediately bring back the Pidgey into play, whilst removing the liabilities such as Rotom from the field. However, that requires a very demanding combo of Thornton, Rurkani, and Pidgeot in hand to really make it work, and it's not easy to pull off on turn 2. Whether this alternate win condition for Charizard with Brier will bring it back to tier S status is up for debate, but it has been winning a lot in Japan. It's also a fairly easy inclusion into the deck, so it's not like you are completely altering your deck to accommodate it. and it's great if you happen to have a chance to use it. This is what I envision a list will look like for Charizard, with the biggest inclusions being Brier, Thornton, and a shift away from the more defensive on first stamp onto the more aggressive prime catcher choice. The next Brier deck we will take a look at is Dragapult. This card can really excel in squeezing the most out of that extra prize card from Brier thanks to the bonus damage counters from Phantom Dive. With a single bonus prize, you can make even stronger comebacks by taking multiple prizes at once if you correctly spread out your damage, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Dragapult is improving in many more ways than just Brier. One of the main things Regidrago is a better Dragapult deck before Stellar Crown is that Regidrago can use Phantom Dive a lot more easily on turn 2 than Dragapult decks themselves can. But Stellar Crown will change that, as it brings 2 new ways to help Dragapult decks attack faster and more reliably thanks to Sparkling Crystal's attack cost reduction to whatever energy you have attached, Psychic or Fire, as well as Crispin's bonus energy attachment and Energy Surge all at once. Sparkling Crystal is a huge game changer for Dragapult, as it can be fetched through Arven alongside a rare candy in your normal setup and your Pidgeot. Now, because you are a stage 2 deck, it's likely you will need a lot of ways to come back from behind early on as well as some disruption, which is why the new Gravity Orb and Pokemon League headquarters could help this deck slow other decks down by trapping Pokemon they can't attack you with or simply forcing just a little bit more out of them to where they miss a turn and then you can make comebacks. Not to mention the incredible synergy between Phantom Dive and Curse Blast from both Dusclops and Dusknoir, making those damage counters even more threatening. And when combined with Brier, you could end up having 4, 5 or even 6 prize turns if you planned it out correctly. Will the combination of Sparkling Crystal, Gravity Orb, Crispin and Brier on top of Recon Directive and Quick Surge finally push Dragapult to new heights? Or will the deck continue to disappoint and continue to fall short when it matters most? I intend to find out, as for some reason this sort of damage counter placement and comeback style of deck tends to be my favorite to play with, and this list is what I will likely be trying out first as I begin to dip my toes into Stellar Crown. Yes, I know there's no Dusknoir line in here, but as usual it's a starting point, and first I want to see how reliably I am setting up and attacking with Dragapult as soon as turn 2, as even though Sparkling Crystal and Crispin are good, you still need an energy in Crystal's case, or you have to use your supporter in Crispin's. Therefore, you're not using Arven or Iono that turn. Regardless of what list you end up going for, Dragapult has everything to gain and nothing to lose at this point. And so, we arrive at the third and final Brier deck, Raging Bolt. The reason I left this deck for last is because it's a deck that, even though it can use Brier, it doesn't do it with its main attacker, Raging Bolt. Instead, it can only do so with Teal Mask Ogerpon. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a great option to have, but it is a lot less reliable both due to the damage output of Teal Mask Ogerpon, but also because it's hard to find at the right time. Regular builds of Raging Bolt focus on going turbo early on through the use of Squawkability and Pokestop, whilst using Prime and Pokemon Catcher to pressure the right Pokemon at the right time. Having said that, you'll likely lose the Brier along the way, so it'll be through Palpad at the end of the game that you'll be able to use it. The main use for this card will be able to help accelerate win conditions. Against Rulebox decks, even if Raging Bolt doesn't take 2 prizes to start off and only takes 1, its new prize map can be 1, 2, 3 thanks to Brier, whereas before, decks could try to buy a turn by promoting a single prizer to delay the deck's win. And against single prize decks, where you are able to take an extra prize to close out a game before they take the last 2. This is great against decks that Teal Mask Ogerpon can easily KO with 3 or maybe 4 energy. For example, against Gardevoir or Ancient Box, Ogerpon can use Brier to take 2 prizes against Drifloon and Roaring Moon respectively, as opposed to being on the losing side of a trade by only taking 1 and losing a close game. Also, it can use it to take down a Radiant Charizard at the end of the game against Charizard or Regidrago, rendering useless their attempt at disrupting the 2-2-2. Between aggressive deck, thinning, and the support of Serendipity, it's not a great chance, but it's a way to win a game that perhaps you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Is the space worth it in a regular Raging Ball list? I think so, and so far results from Japan seem to agree with that too. The final and main use of Brier is to take 3 prizes on a Charizard EX, which can really help turn things around for this deck against what can be a tough matchup. However, that applies to the regular version of Raging Bolt, but there is an alternate one that can utilize Area Zero and Noctowl in order to have more specific search. Jewel Hunt adds consistency to the deck by letting you find 2 trainers when you evolve Noctowl, and thus it replaces the turbo aspect of it for more targeted search, but of course at the cost of establishing Hoot and then having access to the Noctowl. With bigger benches thanks to Teal Mask Ogerpon always having Area 0 active and Fan Rotom for potential turn 1 setup, this could be a viable way to find a crucial Professor Sada's Vitality early on and have an easier time finding a game-winning combination of Brier or whatever other resource you might need to pull off a win. There's no doubt in my mind that Raging Bolt has the possibility to succeed more than it already has, and even though some people think this deck is too simple, sometimes that's enough to be able to consistently win games. And Brier just adds a new layer of strategy and threat to the deck that it didn't have before. Is Brier the best card from Stellar Crown? I generally think it is tied with Area 0 at the moment, and since both cards favor Terra-based decks, I have a feeling we will see either or both in many successful decks for the next few years. Starting with next weekend's Tokyo Champions League, we are going to have a huge stretch of premier tournaments in the Stellar Crown metagame all over the globe. And as far as I can tell, even LAIC will feature this format, so I'm sure we will see a lot of decks change and evolve as we go through all these tournaments. I hope this video has been useful for you. Are there any crazy decks you're planning on playing with Brier in them? Do you think Dragapult will finally have its time to shine? Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching, and until next time. If you want to support the channel, you can use code tablemon to get 5% off at Potent Store for your online codes, 10% off for your sealed product at Flipside Gaming, and 10% off on your aluminum accessories at TC Evolutions. Or if you're looking to buy singles or sleeves, you can fill up your cart and close the tab, then click on the affiliate link in the description and check out. That way you can support the channel over at TCG Player, Card Market, and Dragon Shield. ¿Eres de México y necesitas cartas de Pokémon? Busca Hyperbeam Cards en Facebook e Instagram. Y si estás en Tijuana, búscalos en el local C27 en el Centro Comercial Otay.